Greetings, family. Greetings, everyone. I have to say that I'm in really great shock in hearing about the passing of Big George Foreman, former two-time heavyweight champ of the world. And that family member that we all have that reminds us of him and him of that family member, that uncle, that grandfather, that neighbor down the block. You know, I never knew that George Foreman would transform into what he became. We all know Muhammad Ali. We all know Larry Holmes, Ken Norton, the fighters from that era, which was, to me, and maybe I sound like an old guy who is fixating on what was big when I was younger, but Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Ron Lyle, Ken Norton, Ernie Shavers, Jerry Quarry, you can throw him in there too, Jimmy Ellis. The list goes on of heavyweight fighters from the 1970s that were all great in their own way. And that's when boxing to me was at its most pure, even though we had characters like Don King who did some shady deals, but you got to throw him in there too as part of the entertainment. But I am so glad to have experienced that era of boxing, which George Foreman was a big part of. But the funny thing is, their dance partners, so to say, the men that he fought, they all fought each other pretty much. There might have been one or two instances like with Joe Frazier and Ken Norton or Larry Holmes and George Foreman who never really fought in a professional fight. Maybe they sparred, I don't know. But while others are going to tell you about George Foreman's achievements, when he won the Olympics, when he went to the Job Corps and changed his life around and eventually got into the Olympics, won his first heavyweight championship in Jamaica when he beat Joe Frazier, beating Frazier in dominant fashion. He made two defenses. I know one of the defenses of his title was against Ken Norton when he knocked him out either in the first or second round. Norton went on to do great things. And right up until the time when he lost his title, the Rumble in the Jungle, which showcased George Foreman with Muhammad Ali, which I saw in the movie theater up on Liberty Avenue when they fought live. My father took me there. He wanted to see the fight. And that further really got me into boxing that much more. Even though I chose bodybuilding personally, I thought I could have been really good with my work ethic, but that's neither here nor there. George Foreman, when you look back on his life, it really speaks of the power of second chances. It really speaks on never really writing someone off. Because if you met George Foreman before he entered into the Job Corps, that's a manifestation of a man who wasn't complete yet. And to me, there are so many young men out here. And as far as the inspiration and the power of second chances, it doesn't mean you have to be just a man to experience that and manifest that. You can be a woman also, so we all can get something out of it. But if you see me pausing as I speak now, I'm realizing how vast George Foreman was from the beginning until this point of transition, that at the time I speak these words, he transitioned yesterday, March 21st, 2025. But when I was younger, much younger, I used to really be into the comic books. Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the X-Men. You couldn't pull me away from comic books. But there was one day I was with my father in Manhattan, and I don't know what we were doing. We went down there, we parked the van, and there was on the bus stop an old Boxing Illustrated magazine. And I was about to reach for it and pick it up. My father said, "Hey, you don't know what's on that magazine." I looked at it. He kept walking, not to leave me, but I just ran over there. It looked clean. I picked it up. And then when I got back to the van with my father, he had to run into the store real quick, but he said, "Sit here. I'll be right back." And he could see me. He didn't leave me out there by myself like that. And I looked through the magazine, and they were speaking about a possible upcoming fight with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, which hasn't been cemented in yet. The talks were going on. And this was in 1973 because this was before the fight. And I remember that magazine being from 1973. Guess what? I was 10 years old. And I didn't know anything about boxing, but I saw an article about Muhammad Ali, and he was saying some funny things about some of the other top 10 contenders, because at that point, he didn't regain the championship yet. So I was drawn to him and the funny faces he was making. And every now and then when I would read the newspaper and see an article in the sports section on Muhammad Ali and one of his fights that he had, it always drew me to him. But when it came time for him to fight George Foreman, I remember George Foreman was a monster. See, Muhammad Ali was like the class clown, but George Foreman was the high school bully. He doesn't come over to you to take your lunch money. You see him and you just hand it over. I'm not saying he was really like that, and I heard he was when he was younger, but he had that kind of persona. He did speak to the press, but you hardly saw him smile. And, you know, we tend to fill in the blanks. And as a young boy at that particular time, to see the lines in his face, he was a scary character to me. I'd look at him and say, "Oh my God, look at this guy's face." Just from that alone was very intimidating. And he was big, he was muscular, he was strong, he was knocking everybody out. And Muhammad Ali appeared to be someone who was possibly past his prime, which I didn't think that then because they were looking fit to me. But the jokes are not going to win a fight. But I was caught up in the personas of both of them because they meshed and fit perfectly. And when that fight happened and I saw it, and I saw how Muhammad Ali used his brain to rope-a-dope George Foreman and topple him, I knew then that there was more to boxing than meets the eye of just throwing punches. And I continued to follow the careers of them and so many other fighters because now I'm hooked. I love boxing. You all know that. Most of my analogies are spoken of in a boxing manner. But after he lost to Jimmy Young, and Jimmy Young was a much smaller guy. I believe the fight was in Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. And he had his religious experience. You know, most of us thought, well, George Foreman, you done lost your mind. And then he didn't fight anymore. For 10 years, he got bigger. He was eating. He became a preacher. And he kind of went off into being nondescript anymore because, okay, is that really a hot story that people want to keep talking about? But he had that youth center and he wanted to be a preacher to raise money for that, to help the kids. Hey, he had to be serious because he could have continued to fight for bigger purses and help the youth center. But he wanted to be a role model. He wanted to inspire in a different way. And let me tell you something. When you have, even though I believe he was married several times, when you have the cars, the houses, the money, the fame, and may I mention the women, it's hard when your mind is in a worldly state of mind to walk away from that. So he had to have attained a different way of thinking to walk away from that. The women alone. Oh my God. You all know my weakness. But anyway, when I read in a newspaper, and it wasn't a big article, I believe it was in 1987, early 87, not late 86, but early 87, that he was planning to come back. and he had so much more weight on him. He didn't fight at all in those 10 years. He was 38 years old. 38. You know, now these days, because of technology, supplementation, workout techniques, some fighters go on a little longer if they haven't incurred any damage to themselves, right? But at 38, and it wasn't big news, right? It was like a circus that was happening. It's like, okay, maybe he's going to have 2 or 3 fights and he's going to get punched in the face, out of shape, and he is not going to come back to be a top 10 fighter. Let him do his thing. But as he fought, he started out fighting what they would call tomato cans. Fighters that were just handpicked for him to win. Fighters that didn't have much talent and ability. And it's like, oh my God, he's starting to fight guys who had a little more ability, who were washed up, but not that washed up. Then he started to fight name fighters who were a little bit past their prime. See, he was very smart. He didn't jump into it real heavy. He took his sweet time. The same way when you want to get in shape in the gym and you take your time to get in shape, you don't rush it. Like with me, when I get in the gym, I'm not going to try to be the 19, 20-year-old Lancescurv. No, I'll hurt myself. I'm taking my sweet time. People won't think I'm serious. And things will come back slower and slower, and it won't be like it was because of my age right now. I'm not delusional. But could you imagine how many people thought George Foreman was delusional to come off of a 10-year retirement, never even balled his fist up to throw a punch? And when he was fighting, he wasn't known for his supreme boxing skills. With him, it was intimidation, strength, and sheer power. If you want to see a good fight, go on YouTube or Google it. Search for the video of George Foreman fighting Ron Lyle. They both pounded each other, and Ron Lyle was a very strong fighter. He also fought Muhammad Ali and gave Muhammad Ali a run for his money. And I believe when he fought Muhammad Ali, he was ahead of the scorecards. That's a fight that I would suggest to watch. That was a heavyweight version of Marvin Hagler fighting Tommy Hearns. The 3 greatest middleweight rounds of all time. And Google that too, or search that too. You'll be entertained, even if you're not a boxing fan. You see those 2 fights, most of you will be hooked. But anyway, or you can tell I'm a boxing fan, right? But this is bigger than boxing when we speak about George Foreman. And he got that shot against Evander Holyfield in 1991. I was right there with a house full of people because I always used to throw fight parties. And of course, he had his moments. He represented himself quite well. He got himself into really great shape for his age and represented himself, but he made a statement. And then I believe he had another title shot. Let me see if I can remember. Oh God, he had another title shot. He didn't win that. But then when he fought, oh God, what's his name? I'm having a brain fart in the middle of me talking with the M. His name starts with M. From Kronk Gym. I don't care. I'm having brain farts. I'll put it down in the area below. But when he regained the title, he was actually losing that fight. And he hit homeboy with one shot, and that was a wrap. That was a wrap. And he was back again as heavyweight champion of the world. Michael Moorer. Oh, yes, Michael Moorer. Michael Moorer, right? How could I forget? And Michael Moorer was a fighter who was actually a light heavyweight, and he moved up to heavyweight, and he maintained a lot of his power. And I think he was outpointing George Foreman once again. And it's like, okay, George Foreman he's the old man. And yeah, it's an achievement for him to be here, but he's not going to win this fight. Then boom. And it was a moment. And I'm going to tell you something. If you don't believe in a supreme being, you had to when you saw that knockout and how he bowed down and looked up in the sky. What if he never came back? What if he didn't believe in himself or even know in himself? It's not even about belief. You got to know in yourself. And that long comeback after 10 years, if you can't get inspired behind that, there's something wrong with you. But you got to know the whole story from where he came from. So that being said, He never wrote himself off. And maybe he did get discouraged sometimes. We're all human beings. But the bottom line is, no matter what the world calls you or says who you are, you never put yourself in a permanent box, a permanent description where, oh, this is all I can be. Because the world will tell you that. This world will engineer entertainment to make you think all you can be is a rapper, a basketball player, a thot, a stripper, or a hoochie, a 304, one for the streets, all these different terms that they have. And we accept that. And we have a mental glass ceiling over us. And we also have to invest in our youth to encourage them, to let them know that you're not the area that you grew up in. But George Foreman was the 5th Ward in Houston. I've been to Houston. I've been around different areas like that. And it ain't easy. Nice areas, rough areas, as it is with any major city in America. And he had gone through some rough times when he was young, dealing with the law. As big and strong as he was, too, he was a target. He was known for the thuggery. But look what he became. The power of second chances. So when I got my almost 1,000 WhatsApp messages, emails, text messages, and folks who don't realize that there's a 4-hour difference between the East Coast of the United States and Ghana, West Africa, I got a lot of phone calls too. And something said, let me wake up. My phone always buzzes off and I keep it on. Sometimes I'm like, tonight I'm going to sleep deep. I'll do that once a week. But I like to be on top of things, because if something really happens, I'm not the news, but I walk around rested most of the time. I take several naps a day. I'm relaxed. There's no pressure on me. I woke up today and wrote 2 articles, and this is my first video of the day. So I flow. I even create stuff when I'm out in the street. So I'm in a constant state of creating content, whether it's a video, a written article that I can write on my phone and upload later on. I even can't keep up with myself, right? But something told me to look at the phone. And several of my friends and people who I don't even know sent me, George Foreman passed away. And why it was such a shock is because we were always seeing him doing commentary, doing commercials, being interviewed. And we always say, oh, he didn't look sick. And possibly because it was a private thing that they said respect the privacy of the family. Maybe he did have something he was going through health-wise. And we'll respect that. Look how much the man has given of himself to the world, because you could be famous, you could be rich, and you can go somewhere and sit down somewhere and just, I don't want to be bothered with people. But he was a preacher. And at first I thought it was a gimmick, but he ended up being a real preacher. And there's some people who say, like Larry Holmes, they have their competitive gripe from back when they were fighting Larry Holmes. Oh, he's a fraud, he's this, he's that. After a while, like I said, look at the overall legacy. And as a competitive athlete, you never lose that drive. So when Larry Holmes speaks this way, he has the mind of a fighter, not just an athlete, but a fighter in a sport where you get punched in the face. Have you ever gotten punched in the face? Have you ever got punched in the ear? Cup your hand and just go over your ear. It's like a basketball hitting your ear. You hear the ringing. And to take 15 rounds of that, to do that every day and get hit, to run until your lungs are on fire, to do this every single day and to watch what you eat because you want to make weight. And even if you're a heavyweight that doesn't have to make weight, you still want to come in shape. So there's that degree of dropping weight if you're out of shape. So there's so much that goes into this with discipline, and people don't understand it. It's not just, oh, discipline, and I'm going to the gym and my muscles hurt. Yeah, you get that with that boxing training also, but you're also getting hurt the wrong way, the pain way. See, going to a bodybuilding gym or a fitness gym, no pain, no gain. Yeah, it's controlled, it's pain, and you know that you're working your muscles, you're working your lungs. That's a good thing, because when you rest, you come back stronger. But when you're doing the same thing, and boxers lift weights too, it doesn't hurt you like they used to think, right? Not too much, but you're doing all these other things, plus you're getting hit between the legs by mistake, you're getting punched in the jaw, punched in the nose, thumbed in the eye, your head, your brain getting rattled. As they say, there's more damage done to fighters who spar a lot, from the sparring more so than the actual fight. Think about that. Say you're training 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I don't know. Different trainers have you on different schedules. But you're getting hit in the head. Even if you have the headgear on, you're getting hit in the head. You understand? So to endure that and keep going and sit down and chill for 10 years and come back and get back into that, that's an achievement. That's something that not everybody can do. And it doesn't mean that you have to be, how could I say it, a boxer. You could be a person who is a very cerebral person. You're a great thinker, a great writer, a great communicator, a motivator, a teacher. You could be great in your chosen and ordained area of expertise. You don't have to follow somebody else's dream, but the power of second chances. You know, that's the first thing that came into my mind when I really found out that he passed away. It was about maybe 4:30 in the morning for me, which I usually wake up at that time, but I've been waking up a little later. But once I got up this morning, I stayed up. So I've been up since 4:30. This is far after. But that was the first thing that hit me. It was the first thing that hit me. And I didn't hear a great voice say, you have to title the dedication that you're going to do to George Foreman, The Power of Second Chances. That came to me immediately when I was half asleep. And I laid there and I thought about how he won the championship the first time. And then 20 years later, after losing it, he won it again. I don't think it was 21 or 20 years later to the day. I have to check up on that, but it was 20 years later. Who does that? See, when we have people who have unique stories, we have to understand that it may not actually be about them. Of course, we're going to speak their names, but you have to think, what is the message behind this person's life that I can take something from? And that's what I got. The power of second chances, the power of third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances. But if you get a second chance, don't think you're going to get a third. You might get a third chance, but if you get a second chance in life, don't waste it. And that's what the legacy of George Foreman means to me. Now, it's not just about the championship. That's okay. He won more money, but the sport that he was in catapulted him to a new level of fame, which he used when he had the Big George Foreman grill, if I'm saying it right. And he marketed that, and wouldn't you believe he made more money selling the grill than he did in his entire boxing career. So sometimes you have to understand that we may think of ourselves a certain way, but there's something else out there for us if we conquer where we are now. You might be on a dead-end job, or you feel you're on this dead-end job, and you're like, there's nothing going to happen out of my life. I'm going to come here and get this little bit of money and spend it out on bills and have a little bit left over, and this is going to be my ho-hum life, my mediocre, nondescript life. Oh, God, life is no good. I wish I hit the lottery. And we start dreaming about gambling on the lottery when you are your own lottery. And lots of times we're so steeped in frustration that we don't see the answer right in front of us. Like even this morning, it had nothing to do with George Foreman. I had another aha moment about something else I want to try, because I'm never giving up. In life, I enjoy life. I had a wonderful day yesterday, and I met some wonderful people. And after this one is fixed up and put up on YouTube and Rumble and the website and on Substack and everything like that, I'm heading out there again. And I'm going to stay out there kind of late tonight. There's something calling me. I go with the flow. And that's what we have to do. But we also have to know that there are realities out there that we couldn't even comprehend. Could you imagine that young man who was getting arrested? And if you saw the George Foreman movie where he had to run under this house to hide from the police in the dirt, there's that little crawl space under there. That same young man who maybe the community thought lowly of him because of his actions, was going to be an icon, a motivator, a success story on so many different levels. Now, I don't know the inner workings of his personal life. I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there pissed off at him, or they don't like him, or like Larry Holmes, like, he's a fraud, he's this. I don't know anything about that, right? We have to take away what the message is that the Creator has given us. So anybody knowing Big George Foreman's story should never give up, should always keep trying, always forge forward. And it doesn't mean that you're going to get always going to be motivated. You're not going to get tired. Sometimes you say, I don't know. I really don't know if I can keep on doing this. You know what I mean? Like, you're inspired to do something, but with the whole inspiration thing, let me just say this. And this is part of it, but it's not part of it. Motivation, when you have that motivated moment, like most people do after they have their holiday season, the Thanksgiving and the Christmas and the New Year's, and now you feel bloated. Now you feel constipated. Now you don't feel too good. And you say to yourself, you know what? I'm seeing 50 million ads on the cell phone, on the television, on the billboards, in the newspapers, everywhere, on the radio about joining a gym. Because that's a scam when they do it that way. The gym is not a scam, but they know how you're going to feel about yourself after the holiday season. And we get motivated. Yes, I'm going to join the gym. And you know, you want to do a monthly membership, but they're trying to get a yearly membership out of you because they know after the first few weeks, you're not going to come back. It's money for them. They'll give it to you for a reduced price. Oh, if you do month by month, it's going to end up costing more. Pay for the whole year. It's cheaper. Hey, take a protein shake on us. And now you're feeling good. Just like when you go to the car dealership and they turn on the radio and you hear the sound system. And the sound system is not the car, but it sounds so good. It makes your test drive experience so good that you're ready to sign on the dotted line. So motivation in itself is no good. Well, Lance, what are you talking about? Motivational speakers, and you go to church and they motivate you? That's no good without discipline. If you don't have the discipline to carry out the plan, motivation is the spark. Motivation is like a jump start to a car that conked out on the side of the road. If your alternator is completely bad, you'll get the jump start, but you'll drive a few feet or half a mile and it's going to conk out again. You have to be disciplined. And George Foreman, in coming back, in his moments of feeling not too good, like, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should quit. He had the discipline to fight the biggest fight that all of us have to fight. Let me give you 3 seconds to figure it out. What is the biggest fight that we have to fight in this world? And that's all of us. Okay, nobody said anything, not that you could. But the biggest fight that we have to fight is ourselves. Once we can conquer ourselves, and once we can conquer self, and the things that many of us, not all, but many of us allow in our mind that tell us to sit down. Why are you doing this? You need to quit. Just go sit on the couch and watch a movie. Take the easy way. Or just go, let's do it tomorrow. Nah, let's do it tomorrow. You get to tomorrow and it's tomorrow again, or next week, and it never happens, and the years in your life go by. And that's why they say, if you want to find the greatest collection of dreams that were never fulfilled, you go to the graveyard. Because that little dash between the time that a person was born and the time that they transition is supposed to mean something. But for most of us, that dash is going to be just that, a dash that is empty and it has no meaning in it. I'm sorry to speak so harsh, but I'm speaking from the heart. This is not scripted. I wrote a couple little pieces here for the article to accompany this video on a certain few facts, but I wasn't going to get into the cold, hard facts because by the end of the day, you'll be tired of it. Not that we don't love George Foreman, but who wants to hear it all day? Let's talk about the human side of things and what he really gave to us. That he didn't let his dash get away to mean, oh, he's just a Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas thug, that when he passes away, they're all good. I'm glad he's dead because he was terrorizing everybody. I'm not saying that, but you know how people are. You want to hear what kind of life a person lived? You go to their funeral. Don't even go inside the funeral, the ceremony. Don't go inside. You're going to hear lies most of the time when it's a person who hasn't achieved something in their life, because the pastors, they will doctor up the script of your life. You see what I mean? You hear it and you're like, wait a second. If it's some person who didn't do well in life and just not didn't do well, but that's subjective. But a person some crackhead who used to break into people's houses, I mean, they're human too, and they can redeem themselves too and have second chances. And you know how I talk. How do you think the funeral is going to go? Well, he was motivated as an individual. Yeah, motivated to break into somebody's house. And he had a lot of long suffering in his life. Yeah, because he was on crack for all of those years. But he had some creative mind. Yeah, he found out crazy ways to make money to get the crack pipe filled up. You see what I mean? So there's ways of saying things to make things seem not as bad as they really were, right? But if you really want to know the real story about a person's life, well, you can go to the ceremony and be seen and look at the body. And I don't like all of that. I don't like funerals. For me, I told my wife, I said, listen, when I transition, first of all, don't tell anybody. Get the most inexpensive box. Get some plywood from Home Depot, nail it together. Or maybe I'll make it before I go. Throw me in the box. Don't embalm me. Don't pay out all that money. Don't have all this hooting and hollering with all of these people who may not have liked me, but now they want to come around and see how much insurance money you got. Or they want to come around and hit on you. You know what I mean? They want to befriend you now because they can borrow money and capitalize on your sadness of me leaving. No, just bury me somewhere where nobody else knows. Just my immediate family and my immediate circle of friends who will be on the list, and you have their phone numbers and you already know them. Makes no sense. But you want to hear the real truth about somebody's life when they pass away? After the funeral ceremony, right? Go in the parking lot. He wasn't no good. You see them three ladies over there? He got babies with all of them. You see that man over there? He borrowed $8,000 from him and never paid him back. Yeah. You know why he had to go back and live by his mama, right? Because he got kicked out. And the landlord was coming over here to see if they got insurance money so he can pay the debt back. You see what I mean? It'll all come out that way. I know the things and the toes that I stepped on in this life. I know the things that I've done. I know the hearts that I've broken. You know, I know that. And that's why I'm so upfront and brutally honest. You ask me something, I'll give you an answer. I may not do it so publicly, but I'll give you an answer. I'm not perfect. I'm twisted. I got dark sides. I got twisted fetishes. I got things that I like that other people think is weird. But I'm cool with it because we're all wrapped in a different packaging. And we all have the contents that the world doesn't see on the inside. So the more comfortable you can be with that, as long as it's not hurting anybody, as long as you're not violating anybody, you're unique and you are the way you are because of the circumstances that you've been through, and your DNA is different. Your genetic coding is different. We're all different. We got 2 legs, 2 arms for those of us who do, because some don't. We have our brain to think with the things we like. Relax. Embrace yourself. And like I said before, I was recording something last night. The power went out. I lost it. I was like, man, I was putting it down. But I see where I can mention a few things that I did in that lost recording, which there are many sometimes because of different circumstances. Sometimes I'm recording something and didn't even hit the record button. Talking into a microphone that wasn't on. But it's in me. And in this life, you never give up on yourself, even when everyone else gives up on you. Even when people see your light and they see your destiny, they may not know exactly where you're going to end up, but they see your spirit. And these are the dark narcissistic spirits that don't want you to manifest into what you're going to manifest into. They see it. Like they say, let's talk Christian talk now. The devil knows, Satan knows when you're chosen for greatness. Not because you want to be great. You might not even know it. But your life story may be chosen to inspire countless millions, like George Foreman. If you would have told him that when he was out there thugging in Houston, he might have smacked the taste out your mouth. Who knows? You know what I mean? Because he is so far removed at that particular junction point of his life from what he became. And he was more of what he became than what he was as a young guy who was a stick-up kid, thug, bully. He was more that than that. So what's waiting for you in your life? Even if you're an older guy like me, you know what? If I have 2 more years, 2 more weeks, 20 more years, 2,000 more years. No, I don't want to have that much time. I'll be looking a mess. You don't concern yourself about the time left. You make the best of it. And you look forward to the future and you say to yourself, with every passing day, I'm going to manifest the best version of me. Even if the world thinks it's not going to happen, I can look to George Foreman's story, as I do with many other people's story, that even they manifested this greatness that God put inside of them that they didn't know was there. It's like when you walk around all week broke and you say, man, I can't wait till this paycheck to come. You walked around all week broke. You get paid every 2 weeks. You're doing the laundry, feeling depressed. Let's go extreme. You're drinking sugar water and eating mayonnaise sandwiches. Okay. You're constipated because of that government cheese that you've been living on. And then you wash your clothes and you reach in the pocket and you find $200 that you forgot about. Well, nobody really forgets about $200, but when you cash that check, that tax return check, and it might have been a couple of $1,000s. Now you felt like you had $1 million in your pocket. So now you went and you bought a nice piece of electronic, maybe a radio or something for your computer. And you had $200 and something of change and you shoved it in your pocket, but you weren't so much sweating that $200 because you had a couple of $1,000s in your hand. So that was chump change. And you take the pants off. You forgot all about it. You take the dress off, or, you know, not that it has pockets, but maybe a handbag, something. Maybe you had pants, or maybe you had jogging pants if you're a woman, right? Sweats. And now you're shut down because you think you have no money. And now you find $200 that will do you well for the next week until you get paid. Think of your life like that. Think of your life, the times when things were down, but eventually you came out of it, even when you thought there was no chance of you coming out of that situation. Even if you're in a situation now, think of the past situations that you thought was so dire, so impossible, so much of a mountain in front of you that you couldn't climb. You couldn't climb it in your mind. You couldn't walk around it. You couldn't dig under it. You couldn't go through it. So maybe you were thinking about quitting, but you didn't. And you got through it. That's how you have to see life. And that's what George Foreman has given for me, or given to me. I'm so excited. I'm messing up my words, right? But like I said, this is shoot from the hip and this is a freestyle. This is total vibration from the heart. The power of second chances. If you're here, if you woke up this morning or woke up late because you were hanging out, maybe doing something you shouldn't be doing, you're here for a reason. You are a valuable tool in the divine toolbox. And if you weren't summoned for a task right away like the other tools, it doesn't mean that you're not needed. Because if you're alive, there's a purpose for you. The Creator doesn't make any mistakes. The Creator doesn't waste. We may call a person a waste because they accepted that they were a waste and died a waste, but they weren't created to be a waste. George Foreman, as a thug in the 5th Ward of Houston, just thugging it, had a divine destiny. But there are many people at that time who didn't think so. There are many people at that time who may have wanted to unalive him and take a pistol and do him in, stab him up. Well, thank the Creator that never happened, because he was preserved for that reason. What are you preserved for? Why are you still here? Not because you're just relegating yourself to living a nondescript life. Just work, come home, pay bills, not have enough money, and try to enjoy the few biological functions that may be enjoyable. Eating a good meal. Sometimes you can't afford it. Sometimes you got to live off of crackers, right? And water. I've been there. I've had to do that for a few days at certain times in my life. You know, enjoy your good sleep, a trip to the bathroom to release, and in the bedroom at night to release other things on a sexual level, right? So we get basic in places where there's a lot of, how can I put it? A lot of, lack of hope. Lack of hope. And we just get into the basic things. Yeah, nothing else to do. Come on, girl, let's feel good. And you produce a life that you're not ready for. Or you're eating the sugary, salty foods at the corner store, the Family Dollar, the ghetto stores, right? That are put there to kill us off. So we get out of shape. We feel even more worse with ourselves. You know, it used to be back in the day, and this has nothing to do with George Foreman. I'm just running my mouth right now. I'm going to end this soon. But it seems like from 18 years old, if you graduated high school at that time, look at us at 22 and 23. Because of the bad food, the bad thoughts, the toxic world that we live in, we're so far removed. And the enthusiasm that we may have had in our youth, if we had it, because so many of our youngsters from 12 and 13 and 14, they've lost what little spark they had. We got to understand that. So for the second chance for them, we have to encourage them. We have to keep those fires going. We have a fireplace. You want to keep the fire going, you got to keep on adding wood. Keep on adding hope to the person in their psyche, in their spirit, in their soul. That's our responsibility. It's a shame when we see our youngsters and say, oh, they're failures. Oh, they're no good. Well, you had a responsibility to keep them going, to motivate them. It's you who dropped the ball as an adult. So when you see youngsters, be that light to them. Even if you don't sit down and give them a long speech, make them feel good about themselves. Because you might be the deciding factor, just like the man who saw potential in George Foreman as a fighter, who worked with him. He was the one who was the catalyst and a bridge for the Creator to utilize that tool that George Foreman has become to let you know about the power of second chances. I'm going to end it right here. I wish I could have did this earlier. I had some things to do. But let me know what you think. And give a good word on George Foreman. And leave something in the comment box. And let's vibe on this. You have to be thinking to yourself, so many of our iconic entertainers, athletes, religious folks, spiritual folks, whether they're famous or whether they're somebody in the neighborhood, a lot of them are leaving now. They're transitioning now. We're moving into these age groups now. I myself am realizing my mortality every single day. And so this is why I want to do what I'm put here to do. And it seems like there's not enough time to do it. But that's the joy of it. Focus, discipline yourself, and manifest the greatness that's inside of you. If George Foreman can do it, if he can do it, trust and believe you can do it also. Much love to you all. Lancescurv out. On to the next one. Peace.
Lancescurv.com. Bold, raw, and uncut.